I'm finally back for the last song of Right Place, Wrong Person. Guys, if I ever try to do this again, please remind me, never start a land war in Asia, never start a video series that's going to take longer than a week. I have had these notes written for a while and just didn't quite have the time to film it. I talked about this. I can't remember if it was on a live or in a YouTube video. I forget where, but Come Back to Me is the last song on the album, but it was the first one released. It was the pre-release track in the first music video, which I think was a very intentional choice because, like we talked about in this album, he gets angry and some of the anger is directed at us. And I think it was necessary for him and also for us to hear it, to be honest, but he wanted to remind us that he still wants that relationship with Army, and it's sort of the comfort after getting yelled at. And yeah, I said that as soon as the song came out because it sounds like a resolution. It sounds like a happy, resolved ending. And I, for one, needed to hear that after listening to him go through what he went through on the rest of the album. So the last song was Credit Roll. He's asking, are you going to stay or go back out there? And this, to me, is him going back out there. This is the post-credits scene, which many movies have now. It's the reward for sticking around past the credits. And it's also where you see sort of what happens when the story ends. Because stories, there's a happy ending and then they just sort of go off, but you don't know. The post-credits scene is for learning about what happens afterward. I keep thinking of when I hear it. So first of all, it sounds like somebody waking up from a dream, of course, or maybe a nightmare. And I keep picturing the Breakfast Club scene when they're all getting back in the cars when they go back out to the curb. And yeah, just sort of riding off into the sunset or maybe the sunrise in this case. It's a bad dream. They woke up going off into the sunrise. And I also, that like at the beginning, it reminds me of cicadas for some reason. And yeah, it just sounds like sort of ascending into peace, exiting a building and taking a deep breath as he's stepping out of the hospital from a few songs ago. And again, with the matchup idea, I think that it's a foil of the first song, which sounds like descending into a bad place. This sounds like ascending into a good place. The other thing I wanted to talk about is there's whistling in the song. I'd actually be really curious to know who's doing the whistling, if it's Namjoon or, like a background vocalist. But whistling has been used in other songs and in Damien as a reference to temptation. So is this tempting him back into the idol life, maybe? And I won't do it because so fun fact about me, I'm a really terrible whistler. I can maybe make one or two notes, but not consistently. And if you want to know more about Damien and Wings, we have a great blog post series done by Patricia on the website, armyproject529.com/blog. The first time I heard this song, and every time since, when he says, I told you I'm fine tonight, feeling good, it reminds me of, and maybe it's just because I finished watching them recently, the lives he did last year. It's very much his tone when he's just talking to Army, like, I'm doing good, man. I'm good. How are you? It felt like how he talks to us. Like, I debate sometimes whether these are intentional, because I think a lot is intentional with Namjoon, but also there's certain words he just can't use now without us thinking of other songs. So this song has references to spring and the sea. So spring's always been here, I will sleep in her eyes. So again, that sleep theme and dissociation from several songs on this album. And to me, in this case, spring is the nirvana, the peace, the heaven. To me, what he's saying is that spring's always been here within him. He's had the ability to do that himself, and he was relying on it elsewhere, and he's now remembering that he has to find the peace within himself. And then he says, come back to me like you used to do. So this is him inviting back the things that hurt him in the past, the pain divine, which he talks about a little bit later. Fame, media, love, fans sometimes, his true self without idol wrappings. And he talks about several times, be what you be, trying not to be that something in the sea. You don't have to be anything you see. I wish we could talk about this on a live. We should. Some of the members have been very intentional about saying that they have a persona as BTS. And of course they show some of their own personality too, but they're more intentional with it. Like Jin's been careful to say that he wants to show a certain version of himself to Army sometimes. Namjoon, I'm sure, does that too, but he seems to be more veering to he wants to show himself a little bit more. So I think this is him reminding himself to be more of himself, show more of himself, not to let himself get lost. The section about I forgot the hour, I forgot to shower, washing my face feels like a waste of time. That to me ties into the sleep dissociation theme. Like he was so removed from reality for a while that like we've been there. I mean, that's what depression is like, to be honest. And I'm not trying to diagnose him, but you can go through these periods of emotional turmoil where you just forget to take care of yourself. And it kind of sounds like that's what happened. One of my favorite lines is, "Now I can see what a life was about," which reminds me of in one of the later lives, I think when he had silver hair, he talks about, life is hard. Life is full of shits. I believe what he says is, life is full of shits, but there's some beautiful shits and it's worth living. Paraphrasing. That, I think, was him coming to this album, is that there's some really hard stuff. Yeah, that's just one of those quotes that lives in my head rent free. Life is full of shits, but there's some really beautiful shits. It's so him. So in the album art, there's two pictures. So there's this little guy looking at kind of a warped picture, kind of warped happy picture in a museum, and he's just sort of like, So maybe that's looking at the idol version, him looking at the idol version of himself, or maybe that's how he thinks of the idol version of himself, and that's other people looking at it. I'm less sure about this one. This one definitely ties into the waking up theme. It's again, the first song of the album had someone in a bed, but they were in despair. This is the last song of the album. It's a bed again, but number one, he's not alone. And number two, it looks like somebody who's waking up for a good day, right? This is not a bad day. But also there's this weird, interesting llama type character, which I'm not really sure what he's there for. And yeah, the sound of the song is just so cool and chill. Again, reminds me of Breakfast Club. There's some really cool, like, higher electric guitar parts at the end, which feel a little 80s to me, maybe a little 70s too. And his voice sounds so good. Once again, I don't think there's a bit of rap in this song. He took a chance with doing something he's less comfortable with. It sounds so good. And he was nervous, especially because he performed at D-Day the Final. He performed this song and he told Yoongi his hands were shaking. Like, he was terrified to do this. He was scared to share this with us. And you had no reason to be scared, man. It was a really good song. And yeah, my favorite part of the song, I'm going to put a clip right here because his voice sounds so good. And every time I try to sing it, I screw it up. So yeah, he sounds happy and at peace. And at the end, he's just reflecting on the pain divine, which, again, I talked about what I think it is, but he's just repeating it. We're at one of those parts where it's like a meditation on a phrase. Like, sometimes this is really hard, but I can't picture myself doing anything else. And maybe also I have to do this because it's so important to other people. Oh, that hurts. Anyway, I'm going to end this before I ramble too long. I did make another video about the music video, which deserves a whole discussion on its own. It's, a couple of weeks back. It probably has a label on it. So go check that out if you want to hear me talk about the music video. If you are new here, this is a series where I went through every song on Right Place, Wrong Person, for better or for worse, and gave my opinions. As usual, I don't think that this is the exclusive interpretation of anything. It's just the things that I thought based on my experiences and my knowledge of music. And the album just inspired me to talk a lot. So I recorded it for everyone. If you've been watching since the beginning, thank you so much for your time, and please share your thoughts in the comments. And if you're new, please go check out the other videos on my profile. Bye.